Welcome to Femme Parler Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Shirley Altador, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. Welcome back to another episode of Femme Parler Podcast, and today we have a special guest with us. We have Sharna. Sharna is a life coach and self-healing spiral practitioner. Sharna is a beautiful mom to a toddler, her rainbow baby, a loving wife, a business owner with her husband, and is a soulful entrepreneur. And for those of you who are hearing the little toddler in the background, that's who is going to be our sidekick guest today that you're going to be hearing in the background. And I like to keep this podcast authentic because sometimes being an entrepreneur is hard. It involves your children and it involves different aspects of life. And I wanted her to be comfortable and to be okay to have her daughter in the background. So people know, like, you know, you look at sometimes social media and you see all the gloriousness of being a business owner, but you don't see what's happening in the background. And this is what this woman is doing now. Running a business, doing a podcast interview with her toddler on the side. And I'm a very understanding podcast host and mother myself. The other added benefit of her is we are speaking to Sharna in the future. It is 7:21 p.m. at night for me right now, but it is the very next day for her at 10:21 a.m. in the morning. So it's very nice sometimes when you're speaking to someone in the future. So as you can see, I added all these extras to your bio. So I'm going to pass you the mic to give a more professional bio. Tell the people who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
No, I love it. I've just been laughing along with you. So it's definitely, when you said it's hard, I've had her drawing on walls at my feet while I've been on interviews. So finding all the nice little pictures that she's had on the walls and carpet after I finish. But thank you so much for having me and having me all the way from Australia. So my name is Sharna, and I also am the founder of the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss. I founded my business through my experience of pregnancy loss. I knew that through my healing there needed to be more support. There was definitely a lack of support and understanding from people when you're going through that type of loss. I lost my dad when I was 19, and we had people lining up, giving us flowers, food, comfort, everything you could think of to help us through that time. But when you experience pregnancy loss, it's the complete opposite. Society does not know how to react. You're met with silence, or you're met with people trying to fill in the awkward spaces with something philosophical that's going to fix the situation. So I knew that there needed to be more specialized pregnancy loss support. So that's what I decided to create out of my experience. That's what I felt like I was put on this earth to do.
Thank you, Sharna. So, Sharna, we are going to get started with your story. I guess you can start off as far back as you need to and talking about your pregnancy loss and how many have you had? And you could get started.
So, yeah. So we were trying to conceive for about 5 years. I always wanted to have a family, and on paper I was healthy, I was fit, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, apart from the occasional wine, but I wasn't on paper, I was perfect. I had a husband, I had a house, the I guess the life you think that you will have from when you're a child. And then you're just like, well, that's all in place, and I just want to have a family. So I always felt like quite selfish in my early 20s and late 20s. So I was like, I don't really want to have kids. But then when I turned 30, it was like something switched in my brain, and I was like, you know what? I'm ready now. And so we decided we'll start trying. We ended up having to see specialists, fertility specialists, because for as far back as I could remember, my hormones were always imbalanced. I always had problems with my period and stuff like that. So it was just something that I got used to living with, but now knowing, like in hindsight, like that was actually something that I should have sort of dived into a bit more and looked to balance out my hormones. But at the time I was just like, I just want to fall pregnant. So we went and saw a fertility specialist. He gave me some medication. He's like, this will sort of boost your eggs and will, sort of shortcut the process so that you'll fall pregnant quicker. But still hadn't done anything about my hormones, and I was low in iron and stuff like that. Like my body was just not quite probably as optimal as it could have been. But I didn't know any of that at the time, that was actually going to play a part. And, we fell pregnant, I guess not long after that I started taking the tablets that the fertility specialist had given me. And, it was, I guess, everything that I had dreamed about. Like it was my childhood dream coming true. I had everything and I just wanted the child. So then that happened, that we fell pregnant. It was positive. We went to the GP and she did another test and it was positive. So then we booked in for the ultrasound. But again, because I didn't know my cycle that well, I didn't know when I was meant to kind of finish my period. So I didn't kind of know how far along I was meant to be. I was about, what we worked out, I felt that I was about 10 weeks along before I actually went and got the first ultrasound.
Okay.
And we went in for the appointment, and that was blissfully unaware of anything that could potentially go wrong. And he was doing the ultrasound, and he was there for a while and trying to find, obviously, the baby. And he was there for a bit, and I just thought, this is normal. And then he told me that he'll do an internal because he couldn't find what he needed from the outside. And then he delivered those soul-shattering words to me that he couldn't find. He goes, "I'm sorry, I can't find a heartbeat." And in that moment, the whole room just went silent. And I'm just like, just keep trying. There has to be, I know there has to be another way. It has to be there. Just keep trying, keep trying. This can't be my reality. And he ended up calling in a senior technician, which we actually knew. He was one of our, he was a friend of ours, and he did the ultrasound again, and he confirmed what the first technician had said. So then we were, like, obviously, like my husband, I just turned to my husband and he just held me, and like we were crying. They shuttled us off to the GP to see like what our next steps were. And that's kind of where it all started to, I guess, like, you don't, just getting a lot of misinformation, a lot of stuff that, you know, didn't really help me along my miscarriage process at all. She said to me that, you know, explained what had happened, but just said, look, go home. It takes about 3 weeks for your body to naturally realize that the baby isn't viable and will start to pass. So so essentially I had lost the baby at 7 weeks, and I thought I was about 10 weeks. So a lot of the time that I was actually telling my family that I was pregnant, I had already lost it. And that was one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around too, because I was like, I should have known. Like, I was its mum. Like, why didn't I know that it had passed? And I was telling everyone that I was pregnant. So it wasn't long after we got home that my body just started to naturally miscarry. But I just had a lot of things happen at home that I just was not told about. My GP said it would be like a heavy period, and I was like, okay, well, look, I could handle that, if that's all it's going to be. And I ended up losing so much blood that I couldn't stand up. I was passing out on each time I tried to stand up to go to the bathroom, and I ended up ringing my mum and saying, I think I'm going to die because I can't keep going this way. And then I ended up experiencing contractions, which I didn't know were contractions. And because of other medical conditions that I have, I can only take Panadol. So I'm
What's
like,
Panadol?
So Panadol is just like your basic level pain relief. It's for headaches, usually.
Okay.
Just your paracetamol.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't take any anti-inflammatories. So it was not that it would have even helped anyway with contractions. Because I just ended up Googling it. My husband was Googling how long the bleeding will last, how long like contractions would last. And, you know, he found that the bleeding could last up to 10 days. And I was like, I am legitimately going to die. If I keep going like this for another 10 days, I will die. So I started to believe that there was something completely wrong with me. And they ended up having to put me in a wheelchair and wheeling me to the GP. They called the ambulance and rushed me off to hospital. And in the ambulance, the officer said, why didn't you call sooner? And I was like, well, I didn't know. My GP said it would be a heavy period. That's it. Like, how was I meant to know? I thought this was just all a one-off thing, and it was over the weekend that I was experiencing it. So I didn't think, and I'm like, well, I've got my appointment on Monday. I'll just wait till then. But Monday rolled around, and that's when I physically couldn't move. So, so I was rushed off to hospital to have a procedure done to essentially remove any of the pregnancy, like any of the tissue, any of like what was left. Mm-hmm. But they told me I was having contractions, so they put me on morphine. Mm-hmm. And I just and it wasn't until I was there that the gynecologist said to me that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss. And I was like, well, if that's the case, why do I feel like the only woman that's ever experienced this? Why is there not enough information around? Mm-hmm. Why aren't people talking about it more? And why is there not the support that you need? Because mm-hmm. The aftermath of everything, like after you come home, your whole life has been turned on its head, and you're grieving your future, you're grieving that the baby, you're grieving so much, and no one actually acknowledges that. Everyone's just try to silence it or tell you that you should be over it or that you can't be grieving. So I'm like, I just felt like I was in the dark the whole time, and kind of just finding out what was happening to me at each sort of step that I was feeling something. But yeah, and then coming home after the hospital, I think I was in shock for quite a while, and then I was numb. I just felt like I had cried so much that I didn't have anything left in me to cry anymore. And I was in shock and I was numb. I remember just sitting on the couch, just kind of staring at the floor for ages, and then trying to process kind of everything that was happening, because I'm like, I probably was living under a rock my whole entire life, thinking that you just fall pregnant and it's all just happens and you have a healthy baby. I didn't know anything about miscarriage. At school, you're taught, don't have sex, you'll have kids. So they don't teach you anything even in school that, it just doesn't happen like that for everyone.
Sharna, life is, it's interesting to hear you say that, because it's like, I didn't know. And don't be ashamed of you not knowing, because a lot of people didn't know. And I can definitely relate to your experience, because we had a miscarriage. Our daughter was born in 2007. We had a miscarriage in 2005. You don't know how to handle the shit. First of all, people want to barely talk about the period, let alone having sex, let alone miscarriage. It's like, if you don't find somebody, or such as what you offer, these groups and these support groups to talk about it with you, it's stuff that's not discussed. It's just not discussed. You either have a group of women that feels like everything is private. We can't talk about that. So I can't talk to you about my period. If I'm having like a heavy bleeding day, you don't want to hear about it because it discusses you. Like, get the fuck over it. Like, are you serious? That's how I feel. Everything is private these days. You can't talk about nothing because you just need to keep everything disclosed until you're in a crisis. Then that's when society gives you the open door and the okay, we can speak about it now since you're going through something. So of course you're not going to know, Sharna. No one, yeah. I understand exactly what you went through. Now, of course, when it comes to a miscarriage, each woman experiences something different. But my miscarriage, I passed it at home. But I realized with a lot of practitioners, they're very subtle in their conversation, because the same thing that was said to you was same to me. She said, well, you have two options, Shirley. You could do a D&C and we can schedule for a surgery, or you can just pass the baby at home. And I said, well, I don't want to have surgery. I'll just pass it at home. I didn't realize passing the baby at home was literally giving fucking birth. It's more than just a period cramp. And for anybody who's had a miscarriage, it's more, it is times 100, okay, than a period cramp. You are in pain. You can't walk. You can't stand up. Everything hurts. It's just crazy. And the practitioners are just like, you can pass it at home. That's how they talk. Like, they don't prepare you for anything. It's like, am I going to bleed a lot? What's going to happen? Am I going to be able to walk? It's just like, I don't know if they don't want to scare people, but it's no, you need to give me the 411 here. Yeah. What am I about to approach? Okay. That's exactly. So it's okay for you not to know, because why would you know? You wouldn't have known. And that's the thing. Yeah. And it is true. Those numbers are correct. A lot of times a person's first pregnancy will end in a miscarriage. Not fault of your own, just life. And, that feeling that you had, I had that same feeling. After the miscarriage, I was just like, okay, I guess I'm just not meant to be a mother. Am I being punished for my past sins? And I was like scanning my life in my mind, like, okay, God, why are you mad at me? What did I do? Help me understand what is going on. This was me talking in my head. So yeah, I understand the feelings you were having, because it's awful. Miscarriage is awful. It's not something you just easily recover from or just back up, just like, okay, let's try again. Yeah. You need time to recover. You need to, sex is already, I'm not going to say sex is a chore or a job. Sex is a great thing. But after you have a miscarriage, you don't put sex in that category anymore.
No.
You just don't. Because you, in your mind, you're going through that replay. Well, is this pregnancy going to be another fucking fail? Why are we even doing this?
Yeah. And I think I went through all of those things too, like a checklist in my mind, trying to see what I did wrong. And then that's also because, like I said earlier, that I felt so selfish in my 20s. I just wanted to do things for myself. I'm like, is that why I am experiencing this? Because I was selfish. I just wanted to travel. I wanted to spend money on me. I wanted to do things for me. Like, am I being punished for that? And I'm like, I'm a good person. I don't speak badly about anyone. Like, what have I actually done? And yeah, like when you're in those, weeks and months after, it's not days, it continues, and you just don't, you're still trying to make sense of everything, because I think it's human nature to try to make sense of something, try to make it, like pull it apart, try to sort of, it's just how our brain works, even though you may never, ever make sense of it. But yeah, sex in that space, like it's absolutely the last thing you want to go, the last road that you want to go back down. And that was actually one thing that the nurse said to me when I was laying on the bed ready to get my D&C. I hadn't even been in yet. And she goes, "Oh, do you know that you're fertile after your D&C?" And I was like,
what the hell is that supposed to mean to me?
I'm like, really? I'm like,
do you see how like nonchalant the conversations are? It's like, you don't need to tell me that right now. What's that supposed to mean to me?
I know.
I know the feeling. Because that's what, just like after you have a baby. So that's why you're so fertile, because after you have a baby, you're very fertile. But it's like, do you really need to tell me that now? That's not the support I need. I don't want to hear about it right now.
No, I was drugged out on morphine because I was in that much pain. And then you're telling me this. And I'm like, I honestly couldn't comprehend her thought process. And I was like, this is something that you tell me maybe not, I wouldn't even say weeks after. I'm like, maybe a month after, or a follow-up. Just even if you had, like, that's the thing though, there's no follow-up after your miscarriage. You're kind of like, once you're out of the system, it's up to you to figure your stuff out. You'll figure your life out and what's happening to you. So even if that was something that was meant to be said in a follow-up, you never get any follow-up.
No, you don't. Not after that. It's kind of like you can just schedule a regular appointment, and that's if you choose to, because most women may not, but there's no follow-up. I had it at home. There was really no follow-up. It was just like, I called her, we talked on the phone, and that was the follow-up. It wasn't in the office follow-up.
Yeah, and you probably, they keep it up to you to initiate the follow-up. Like, that's what my GP said to me too. She's like, just keep an eye on your mental health. And I was like, for me, I was quite in touch with my mental health. So I'm like, I knew when I was starting to go down the road of depression, but I'm like, not every woman, if you say that to every woman that has a miscarriage, they're not going to know. They're going to go down the road of depression, and they're going to go down the road of anxiety and fear and letting all of that consume them, and not actually know that that's what they're experiencing until they're at rock bottom and they can't get themselves back out. I was just fortunate enough, because when my dad passed away, I did experience depression. I was there for a year before I sought help to get me out. I lived in the past. I tried to do everything that my dad and I would do when he was alive. I tried to, I guess, live as if he was still alive, which was not helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to recognize that for myself when I was after the miscarriage, and my husband actually started to recognize that too. So, you know, he was able to, in his way, tell me that that's what was happening and I needed to be aware of it. So to have his support on the sideline too was really good, because he actually did help me through coming out of that and recognizing that for me, if I wanted to actually go on and try for another baby, that I had to work through what I was going through. I had to process my experience. And I knew for myself I had to process my experience. Otherwise, I would take all of that with me into the following pregnancy, and I wouldn't enjoy the following pregnancy. I would be consumed with fear, or if it all went wrong and I did lose another one, then I would literally probably would have fallen to pieces even more. So, you know, I needed to know that I was strong enough to mentally and physically to cope if I did lose another baby, and once we had started trying again. But I also needed to know if it was a healthy pregnancy, that I would be able to enjoy the pregnancy and it not be overshadowed by fear.
Exactly. Now, I wanted to tighten up on some timelines. So when did you get married?
2009.
2009. And how old were you then?
I was 25.
Okay, so you waited, so you were married 5 years before you guys started trying.
Yeah.
So at 30, you guys started trying.
Yeah.
How long before you realized, okay, this is not working, we need to go see somebody? Did you wait like a year?
I think we waited 2 years. We were going to sort of see how it went after the year, but then life happened, and then it was probably it might have been about 2 years after we started trying, because then we're like, no, it's fine. We'll keep going. And when you talk to your GP, they ask you, like, how long have you been trying? And they also tell you, I mean, obviously age plays a huge part in it too. But I had a girlfriend as well tell me that they had been trying for a year, and then she went and spoke to her GP, and they're like, oh no, wait longer. So I'm like, so in my head, I was kind of like, do we wait longer? Do we try now? So I was a bit torn. So I think it was about 2 years before we actually started to go down that road.
Okay. So now at 32, you go see the GYN. And how soon after that? Because you said it was quickly after that. So how soon after that did you get pregnant?
I would say it was probably, in my mind, I can't remember exactly. It was a couple of months. Okay. Like it was couple of months on the medication.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 32, you start taking the medication, you get pregnant, and you lose the child. Now, how long did you guys wait after that before you got pregnant again? And was it naturally or was it medication this time?
Yeah, so what I did... Okay, so hang on. How old she's... Oh, that could work, yeah. I ended up seeing a acupuncturist as well.
Okay.
In the time, so we waited. It was probably about 5 months before, and in that time, I went to my GP, got my health back on track, made sure that I made her check everything about me, which is another thing that I bring awareness to for lost mums, is the methylation system of our body, because essentially our body is meant to function like well on its own, and there's a lot of things that happen in our lifestyle outside that, and our mental health and our physical health, that we, you know, like on paper I felt like I was fine, but internally, when I had like a whole bunch of tests done, by my GP, there was a lot of things that were out of balance. So I worked on getting my physical health back as well as my mental health. And I went and saw a acupuncturist, which had helped me. She was a bit of a therapist as well.
Okay.
So she actually helped with pregnancy. She was doing acupuncture for pregnancy, and she was also telling me to be a lot more aware of my cycles.
Okay.
Because I didn't know when I ovulated. I didn't know my periods were so irregular leading up to the miscarriage. I couldn't have told you anything about my cycle. So I was.
So when you say anything about my cycle, so we'll use myself as an example. My periods are very irregular. I grew up being told that it's every 28 days faithfully. When my cycle was not every 28 days, I didn't realize that is okay. That's normal, because every female cycle is different. Some women are every 28 days on the dot. They know the day. Other women, such as myself, I'm every 30 to 40 days. There are times where my body will miss actually a whole month, if that makes sense. It's every 30, 40 days, but there are times my body, since I've been gauging it, I'll end up only getting my period about 11 months out the year because of how my cycle ends up falling every 30 to 40 days. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm missing a period. It's just how it falls. It's kind of shifting itself. So when you say, and my periods last 7 days, some people are like, it's only 3 days. I'm like, what the fuck? 3 days? Full 7 days from start to finish, 7 days. And it's always been like that. So what didn't you know about your cycle in your 30s?
Yeah. So I think being on, when I was 13, they put me on contraception because of my period. I was losing a lot of blood.
Oh, okay. Heavy bleeding.
Yeah. And for about 2 weeks. And then I'd have 2 weeks off, and then I'd have them again for 2 weeks, and I'd have 2 weeks off.
Okay.
So they put me on the pill when I was 13, up until probably and I had changed over to a Mirena.
Okay.
At one point, just before we were falling pregnant. So would have been just before we started trying that I had the Mirena taken out. So I had never experienced what it was like for my body to go through a natural cycle.
So that makes sense. That's why you just didn't know.
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't know what I thought when I actually took myself to the doctors when I was ovulating because I thought something was wrong. I had this pain in my side. It felt like someone was shoving a knife in there.
Oh.
And I said to my GP, I'm like, what's happening? And she's like, you're ovulating. I was like, I feel so stupid.
This is so, but this is the thing, when you don't know, you don't know. At 13, you're put on contraceptives. And from 13 till about 30, you were taking these contraceptives faithfully because of the heavy bleeding.
Yeah, because I was nearly hospitalized for iron deficiency when I was 13. I was barely functioning as a human. I couldn't do anything. So that's when they decided that I had to do that. So yeah, it was... And we
have a lot of similar issues because I have very low iron because of my heavy bleeding, but not to the point where it debilitates me. I can still function, but about the second or third. So 24 hours into my period till about hour 72, that's when the bleeding is really heavy. So if I don't take iron pills, my iron level is very low. It's gotten as low as 3. And my doctor was like, how are you even functioning with an iron level of 3? I should be giving you a transfusion. So if I don't take iron pills, then it's not good. So I can totally understand what you mean. Never had to be hospitalized or, bleeding not so bad to the point it debilitates me, but it's heavy to the point where if I can be home, I'm home, because it really, truly is. it's a burden. Like, you know, those purple pads from Always, the ones that are like thick and fat, those are the ones that I have to use. And I'm changing them like 4 to 5 times a day. So, yeah, I can totally understand what you're going through. Very similar experiences.
Yeah. And that's when my iron was about 3 or 4 when I was 13. And that's when they were like, we need to, if we don't fix this now, you will be in hospital.
Yeah.
And it gets down to about 5 or 6 now. Like but every 30 to 60 days, it'll drop down. And then I'll have to have, until I had the iron infusions, if I was taking iron supplements, it would keep dropping every month.
So it didn't work for you. The iron supplements were not working.
So they ended up having to have the infusions, which last a year. Which my GP, she's like, you know, if we can stay on top of that and then take supplements as well, then we can balance it out. There's something that missing in my blood that doesn't hold the iron. So it, as soon as that blood regenerates, like every 30 days, our body regenerates. It regenerates without it. So, and then it just drops. It keeps dropping. So yeah, the supplements, as I was on them, but they just didn't work.
So once a year you have to have a transfusion?
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing for the last pretty much after the miscarriage. They're like, this is what we will have to do, because your iron they just couldn't stay on top of it. And by the time I would go to the GP thinking that feeling like my body had weighed, it was weighing a ton, and out of energy, they're like, we need to actually do something that you can keep on top of yourself, rather than feeling like you literally can't lift your arms and legs, and then that's when you come into the doctors, and then they've got to do something more dramatic. So
that explains why you had the heavy bleeding for the miscarriage, where if you didn't have the iron issue, you most likely probably would have passed it, like very similar to how I passed it. But because of your iron levels is different from mine, so that's why you were bleeding extremely heavier than normal when you were having the miscarriage. And, you know, she knew about your low iron levels. I'm very shocked that she didn't suggest you have the DC instead of passing it at home. I guess she just chanced it, huh?
Yeah, I feel like I honestly feel like that's what it was, that she just took a chance that it would be okay.
That it would be okay. And assuming that you wouldn't bleed so heavy, but yeah.
And I actually had, and after my experience, I had heard of a woman hemorrhaging through a miscarriage, and she actually passed away. And I was like, that's where I felt like I was at. I felt, and for me to believe that I was going to die and ring mum and say I was going to die, I ended up having to tell my husband, I'm like, don't go into the bathroom. I didn't have energy to clean anything. I just kept getting dizzy and blacking out, like on the way to the bathroom. But I knew and then I just stayed in the bathroom. At one point, I'm just like, I can't move. But, you know, for him to witness all of that too, like it breaks my heart that that's what he was actually watching, and couldn't do anything about it.
You know, it's hard for men too, because they don't know what to do to offer support other than comfort you and verbal support, because a man will never really truly understand what a woman's going through when it comes through a miscarriage, when it comes through a period, when it comes through giving birth. Of course, they have some of these tools out right now, something that you can strap to a guy and it feels like contractions. I've heard of that. But to actually really experience what we're going through, they really can't fathom. And all they can do is verbal or physical support. And that's it. And when I say physical, I mean comfort. That's it. And
Yeah.
that's if you want it. Because when you're going through that situation, it's like, I don't need a hug right now. This is not what I need. I don't need a hug,
I
and
just
you
need you to
try
take
not.
all my pain away. Yeah.
That's what I need. Exactly. Just take it away. But they can't do that. So it's just
Mm.
like, it's hard for us to balance our emotions, not to lash out at them when they're doing the best that they know how to do.
Mm.
It's hard for a man, you
Yeah.
know? So now, after this miscarriage, how soon after did you try again? And the next pregnancy, is it rainbow baby?
Yes. Yeah. So we had one
Okay.
loss. And that's where I wanted to make sure that I was, before we even tried again,
Mm-hmm.
that I was in the right mind frame to go down either one of those paths.
Mm-hmm.
Um, having a loss as a first pregnancy really does, kind of tarnishes the whole pregnancy in itself, like experience,
Mm-hmm.
because you think then you don't know what a normal what a healthy pregnancy feels like before experiencing loss. So it's hard. And so yeah, I had to make sure that I was in the right space. So I spent a lot of time. It was probably around that 5 month mark that oh sorry, I'd say maybe the 4 month mark, we tried 2 cycles and I fell on the second cycle. Um, so
You
the
felt, what
second
does that
of
mean?
my second period, like when it was meant to be my second period, I
Oh,
fell
okay.
in that. So we tried over like the 2 months,
Gotcha.
and I fell on the when I should have had my second period. So it was around the 5 months that I fell pregnant,
Okay.
again with our rainbow.
Okay.
Um,
And did you wait like till you were a little further along before you made any announcement with this time around?
no, I did the same thing as I did the first pregnancy.
Okay.
With the first pregnancy, we told our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the second pregnancy, we did the same. We told our
Okay.
family, we told close friends, because we knew we needed the support
Okay.
if for any reason it was all going to go not according to plan. So
Mm-hmm.
we told people within the first trimester, and then having mum have to have this secret for literally the whole time till like the
Oh.
second trimester was hard for her. But I just knew that we needed that support, and I don't believe myself in having to wait till the second trimester to tell people,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to have people around you that kind of know what you're going through and can be there to support you no matter what. Like the first trimester for me was hard. um I was in and out of the doctors weekly
Mm-hmm.
with just being sick. So um it I needed the support from my mum in the first trimester as well. Even though it was a healthy pregnancy at that point, I was ill and needed someone in my corner. So
Yeah.
and if we did fall pregnant again, it would be the same. I would still tell people in the first trimester. I don't believe, yeah, for me personally, that waiting is doing anyone any good, especially if
Okay.
it's just your family that you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
You're not telling the whole entire world. Just to have someone in with you that knows exactly what you're going through. If it's good, then it's good. If it goes wrong, then you've got someone in your corner too.
Now, with the services you offer, how do you give support to women who have experienced miscarriage? And
Yeah,
also, I
so
want to ask you, does your program also, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but if someone had an abortion, do you still offer support for those women who need that? Because even in abortion, I went through that as well. Depending at what, and let me explain this. I feel as though abortions can be handled in two different ways. There are women out there, I feel, that do not take accountability and responsibility for their actions. We all know when you have sex, the chances of getting pregnant is high. So when you just, I feel like, continue having abortion after abortion after abortion, I think you need to kind of take a step back and realizing, why the fuck are you doing this? Maybe you need to not lay down all the time or get a contraceptive or something, because after the first abortion, you should be affected in some way, shape, or form. So do your services offer that support for maybe a teenage child? Because usually that's when it's prominent. I had mine at 17. So do you offer support for younger ones, maybe that don't have a choice or something like that?
Yeah. So I do have my services open. It's obviously not my experience, but what I do know is how you can process your thoughts, how you can process those emotions that come through that. So even though having an abortion is not my experience, I can absolutely help women through their journey, and through being able to move and move to a place of acceptance within themselves and within their story, and hopefully, come out the other side. But I definitely, so the way that my support works is having one-on-one time with the women. I believe that's the best way, and that's the way that my clients have seen the most transformation, is to have that one-on-one support, is to have that person holding your hand through those times, through the times that you get triggered, through the times that you just, for some reason, you're, uncontrollably sad that day, and or you have setbacks. So you need someone to be able to support you through that and to hold your hand through that. And I believe that the one-on-one setting is the best place for that to happen, to get that understanding, to get that compassion and support, and to have someone help you feel empowered through your experience, through your journey.
Now, when someone comes to you, what is the first steps that you do? Is there like a consultation? Like, let's say in my experience, when I had my miscarriage and I reached out to you, is there a consultation? Do you kind of screen people? How do you screen people in this situation? Because you know how when you start a business and they say, if you think your business is going to be for everyone, you need to wake up, because that's not and it took me a long time to realize what that mean. But in your situation, how do you screen someone who just had a miscarriage or just had a loss? How do you know that you're capable of helping them?
So basically, what I have realized through, and like you said, it is hard because I want to help everyone, but I know that I can't. I know that not everyone wants to be helped either. I had a lot of women reach out who said they wanted support, but all they wanted to do was just talk. They didn't want to actually receive anything. So that's when I started to realize that there was a point within their journey that I would fit for them. Okay. Obviously, not in the initial stages of grief, like within the days or weeks afterwards, because that's when you're still numb and you're in shock and you're still trying to process all of that for yourself. Where I sort of fit is when the women are sort of coming out of that initial stage of that numbness and shock, and actually are starting to address sort of what's happening, and acknowledging that they do need support, that they need someone to help them through that, because they shouldn't have to do it alone. It's hard to do it alone. Navigating that time and being sort of just with yourself and with your thoughts and with your emotions, it can get consuming. So you need someone sort of outside your fishbowl to sort of address kind of what's happening and see your life from the outside so that you can get a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the women have to be open for that. The women have to be open to receiving support, receiving the tools that they can use in their day-to-day life, and actually doing those things, doing the things that will help them acknowledge their emotions, help them acknowledge their triggers, and actually be able to move through that for themselves to transform their life. They have to want to have kind of their life back.
Mm-hmm.
It will look different. It won't look the same as what it was prior to their loss, but they do have to be open to wanting to receive that support and not just wanting someone to just talk to, in a way, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense. I totally understand and I like how you said in the beginning, when I told you about screening, there are some women that just want to talk. They were reaching out to you to talk. And even, this is a service that you're providing. It's a paid service. So I can talk to you, but at some point the talking is going to be cut off and you have to want it. I can't make you want it. So I totally understand that, because there are some women that just wanted to just spill their guts out to you just so you can listen to them. And then you realize, like, wait a minute. Okay, we do need to take this further. I'm not just here for a couch conversation. So, and as hard as it may be, like you said, you do have to cut it off at some point because you want to help everyone. But it's just not going to be the case. So now you lost the baby. Your second pregnancy was successful. We have Rainbow Baby, who is our guest in the background.
At my feet.
How did you, I know, it's okay. She's letting us know. She's letting you know I'm still here, even if you don't hear me. How were you able to now regain your power and be able to create a business from this and be a support system and an avenue for other women who are going through this? Because there's so many different paths after a miscarriage. Women try again. The second, the third, the fourth may not be successful. Mm-hmm. You don't know what's going to be that successful pregnancy. You just don't know. So how long grief may be, and how are you able to now bounce back, get back on your feet, and create a business from this?
It was almost like I knew my experience was bigger than me. I had a feeling just within me that what I was going through wasn't just me, and it was going to be bigger than me. I wanted women to know that they didn't have to stay, stuck in those initial stages of grief, because there is a beautiful life for them waiting for them on the other side. And a lot of women, what I would hear, would want to fall pregnant again to fill that space, to fix the loss. And it's not the right way to actually, go about the pregnancy. And I know the women have, good intentions, but it's not going to fix it. And it's not going to make the pregnancy nice and enjoyable. So I wanted women to know that they had the choice to process their grief, to start to come to a place of acceptance within their story, and then be able to look forward to a future that is different, however that plays out, that they would have the tools to cope mentally and physically with that. Whether that was trying again and potentially having more losses, or whether it was trying again and having a rainbow baby. And parenting after loss is hard, especially if you haven't dealt with any of the emotions. So it's not like when you have your rainbow baby that it all just goes away either. If you haven't processed those emotions from your initial loss, everything gets compounded, and it just gets bigger. And you know, women are, I've heard women say that they want to ignore their situation, which is fine, I think, for the interim, but it's not going to serve them long term
Yeah.
to ignore that part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, I always knew that there was a bigger calling for me my whole entire life. I won't say my whole entire life, probably since my dad passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a qualified dental nurse, so I actually had a lot of experience helping people, and really enjoyed it. So I always knew that that was going to be that was my gift, to support people, to hold space for people when they're at their most vulnerable. I just didn't know what that would look like as a career. I knew I wanted to make it a career. I just didn't know how it was going to work. And then with our miscarriage, I had run into a couple of people who had told me about life coaching. So I undertook a life coaching course and then decided I would become a pregnancy loss coach. I specifically knew that after my loss, that was the direction, that was the avenue that I wanted to go down, and really get women to the point that I had experienced, to be able to and move through those painful days, those hard days, and those uncomfortable emotions, but to find their happiness again and to find joy in their life again, that they don't have to be stuck in the grief and the sadness and the darkness and the heaviness that is grief. But grief doesn't leave you. It learns to coexist with your life. I still cry.
Yeah.
I still cry for my baby, and I still cry for my dad. Like, the grief is still there because the love is there. There's always going to be grief. You just learn how to live with it in a way
Yeah.
that serves you, and have the tools to sort of cope when it does pop its head up.
Yeah. Crying is not a bad thing. I think when we're growing up, we're always told kind of like, you don't cry, and crying is seen as a negative, but crying is not a bad thing. And people need to do it more often. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
good to cry to help those emotions release and
Mm-hmm.
those
Yeah.
toxins leave your body. So crying is a good thing. Every now and then
Yeah.
I have to cry. Gotten so comfortable to the point where like my kids would be like, oh, who knows why she like, I'm not afraid to do it in front of the kids. They'll ask me what's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, Mommy's just having a moment. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
So
My
that's a good
mum,
thing.
yeah, my mum doesn't like to see me cry. And I'm like, Mum, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
it's
Crying is
okay.
good. Crying, it actually it's releasing those emotions. And you feel so much lighter
You do. You
when you're
definitely
able to
do.
have a good cry.
So now a few questions before you give your last empowerment message to our listeners. Are you going to try again?
Um, we I'm approaching, I'm 30, I'm 38 now.
Oh,
I
we're
never
the
thought
same
that
age.
I
You're
never thought that I'd
38.
be, I never thought I'd be at 38 and have a toddler. So if it happens, it happens. I'm not
Okay.
going to say no, but
Okay.
right now, um, I have a rod in my arm that's like a contraception. So
Oh, okay.
right
Okay.
now, right in this very moment, no, but um
Eh,
the
The
who
doors
knows what
aren't
the future
closed.
holds. No.
Gotcha. You still have
Yeah.
that discussion open for later
Yeah.
on. That's
Yeah.
good. That is
Yeah.
good. So, what is one empowering message you want to offer to a woman who has experienced pregnancy loss?
Um, I would say to listen to yourself, listen to what it is that you actually need. Don't listen to anyone else that might have their opinion on what you actually need. Um, if you want to cry, cry. If you want to punch a pillow or scream into a pillow, release what it is that is coming out of you and allow yourself to grieve, because you are grieving. And as much as society doesn't understand it or recognize it, that's what's happening. And you're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to cry and feel like an emotional wreck, because that's all part of it. And don't deny that part of you. Don't deny that those emotions that are coming to you to be felt and expressed, because it's all part of your healing process.
Mom, I want to go down.
And yeah, you know yourself best.
Very good. You know yourself best is very true. And listen to yourself at that time, because that's very important. It is okay to cry, listeners. You know, crying is not a negative thing. Crying is a good thing. And sometimes it just needs to happen. You know, of course, you cry if you're getting married. You cry if you have a baby. You cry for positive things. It is okay to cry if maybe someday is even for myself. Sometimes I have triggers that hit hard. Sometimes I miss my grandmom and I just need to let it out, because holding it in is not going to do anything for me. So, you know, Sharna, I want to thank you for being a guest. You provided us, thank you for sharing your story, because as you said, you know, these are things that women go through that are not discussed. And unless you have someone as yourself who's offering the coaching and pregnancy loss, and who have the groups and who discusses them and who talks about them and let women know it is okay to speak about this. You are not alone out here, because they're not.
No.
You know, this is so important. So I thank you for sharing your story. Very much appreciated. Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for our guest in the background. As you know, I can see her right now, but you guys cannot. She's been quiet for the last few little bits, but you know, I can tell by her face, she's like, I'm hoping you're almost done, because I gave you an hour. So, guys, I want to thank you for listening. And as always, remember to love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself. Until the next podcast, have a great one. Thanks for tuning in to Fanpale Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.